with our conservation officer corps, essentially looking at ways that we can improve recruitment and retention of officers in our agency. We do have quite a number of vacancies. At present, we have a number of officers in our training program, but we spent the last 12 or 14 months meeting with staff and developing some concepts, and thought it might be important to share those with the commission. And I won't talk about all of the efforts that were undertaken as part of this review, but really focus maybe more on specifically some of the changes we're making in our organizational structure to try and improve our ability to retain officers, especially to try and keep them in some of those smaller communities. So with that, we've been aware of some of the issues with our conservation officer vacancies. We have lost officers to other states, especially some surrounding states. Many of those officers that we hire from, say, Iowa or Minnesota return to their home state, and that may be something we could naturally expect. There are, of course, salary differential issues, especially when we're talking about states to our east, Minnesota, Iowa, Wisconsin especially. Pretty tough for our state to compete on a salary level with those state wildlife agencies. The other thing that I think came forward in our discussions, and we've been made aware of it, is the lack of promotional opportunities for our conservation officers. They really only have one opportunity to move up, and that would be to a conservation officer supervisor. We have 61 officers and only 8 conservation officer supervisors, so the lack of promotional opportunity is certainly an issue. We do have, in some regards, a lack of ability to recruit some officers to some of our more remote duty stations. A number of reasons, of course, would be spousal employment opportunities. Just about every one of our officers has a two-income family. Certainly some of the social and cultural issues, lack of shopping opportunities in some of the smaller communities can be an issue. The lack of housing, and I think you heard Nor Berry yesterday talk a little bit about that, and housing in some of our smaller communities is becoming a real challenge, and so placing our officers in some of the small communities can at times be pretty difficult. Our protracted hiring and training process is something we made a conscious decision to do a number of years ago. It takes from advertisement to placement about 9 months to fill a conservation officer position. We've got about a 6-week to 8-week hiring process, and a number of preliminary training sessions that we put on with the staff, and then of course the Law Enforcement Academy and our field training program, about a 7-month process in itself. So, and we have had some fluctuation in the number of qualified candidates for our CO trainee positions over the last few years. So just talking some numbers, we have 75 certified law enforcement officers in the Division of Wildlife over the past 5 years. Our conservation officer vacancies have certainly been higher than any other classification within the department. 61 of those are field level positions. The other 14 are either supervisory positions, our conservation officer supervisors, or specialized positions. We have law enforcement specialists, some investigators, and so forth. And then our law enforcement program administrator, Andy Albin. We currently have 9 vacancies, one in the specialized area. Our tips and training coordinator position is open and will be filled here shortly. We also have 8 field officer positions, essentially for a 88% fill rate, which has improved over the last few months from 82% in the early stages of our study here. So we have 3 trainees that are scheduled to complete field training on March 28th. We've got 3 more trainees that are graduated from Law Enforcement Academy on March 1st. That's a 13-week academy. Essentially certifies them as a state law enforcement officer. And then we recently hired another trainee during our last hire process. We had made offers to 2. Only one made it through the final stages of the hiring process, however. And he began Law Enforcement Academy, I think, this week, if I'm not mistaken. So barring any additional losses, we would hope to have about 95% of our officer positions filled by July 1st of 2013. As part of our review process, we worked with Jeff Wilson, our Bureau of Human Resources manager. He conducted some preliminary assessments on our vacancy rates and losses. He also conducted interviews with 29 of our 61 officers, essentially just asking them some specific questions about things that they feel could be improved upon. Jeff and I actually went out and met with our officers and supervisors in each one of our administrative regions, and then spent 2 or 3 different sessions visiting with Andy Albin, our law enforcement administrator, as well. And we compiled that information, put forth some draft ideas and concepts, and then finally some recommendations, and shared those with Jeff and Tony, and had discussions with our regional supervisors and Andy as well. In terms of recommendations, the idea is that we're going to try and create incentives for officers to remain in duty stations for extended periods of time. Essentially, what we've heard from many of our communities is that they really are concerned when officers move into a community and maybe only stay there a year or 18 months, sometimes 2 years, and then move on. Conservation officers, and I can well remember this, we're looked upon as a true member of the community, and of course we bring families, and there's a great appreciation to have our staff and especially in some of our smaller communities. So beginning January 1st, we're going to provide some salary incentives. This was something that we were able to work with the Bureau of Human Resources on. We're going to provide an additional salary incentive if an officer remains in a duty station for 2 years, and then a second salary bump would come at 4 years in that duty station. These will be in addition to our other salary increases. I think you heard Chris Peterson talk yesterday about the salary package that's being considered this legislative session. I think we'll be seeing hopefully a 3% cost of living increase for our staff, and a 3.5% movement to midpoint of the range. So these would be in addition to those bumps. So it would create that incentive for those officers to remain in those smaller communities.
See, I meant,
Yes.
was that this year or was it last year? Because it says 2012, but is it 2013 or 20?
2012, actually, because we
Oh,
started the
okay.
study back then. We intended to make it effective a year ago. So
Okay.
in another, essentially, year, we'll be able to provide those incentives. So
Okay.
thank you. It still will provide a salary increase if officers compete for lateral transfer opportunities. Many times when we have a vacancy, we'll offer that to our current officers and allow them to compete for those positions. The criteria being that we often award an additional salary bump in those situations, provided there's at least more than one applicant, and that we complete an interview process. So. Other recommendations, we are going to make some adjustments to our regional organizational structure to help improve our operational effectiveness and actually create some more promotional opportunities for our officers. Of course, the goal is to accomplish that with no net increase in FTE, and we think we've come up with a strategy to do that that's going to both be effective and yet provide those additional opportunities to create incentives to retain our officers here in South Dakota. We are going to create a new position. It's a little higher level position, a pay grade above a conservation officer supervisor, that would be assigned the preponderance of the administrative duties. That position would be essentially more or less an 8 to 5 administrator position in each of our administrative regions. Administrative duties right now are shared between 2 conservation officer supervisors in each one of our 4 administrative regions. We would place a preponderance of those administrative duties on this single position, and we would reduce the number of staff who directly coordinate with Andy Albin, our law program, from 8 to 4, and hopefully create some efficiencies there and in that change. But it would create one more promotional opportunity, again, a higher level for our conservation officers and conservation officer supervisors. The CO positions, the supervisor positions rather, would become what we would call working field supervisory positions, and our plan is to add an additional CO supervisor out in each one of the administrative regions. So we'll go from 2 CO supervisors would be working in the field, not working in a regional office, to a total of 3, and again, creating that promotional opportunity. The reorganization would provide for larger CO districts, essentially where a team of 4 to 5 COs, plus the field supervisor, would be responsible for the sum total of all the conservation officer work in that particular district. I've got a little map here that I'll demonstrate how this will work and just kind of the conceptual changes that are being put in place. The district boundaries will be comprised of several counties, and essentially the idea is to kind of wash the county boundaries. And currently we have COs who are responsible generally for 1 county. In some cases they have a county and a half or 2 counties, but the idea is the team of officers is going to be responsible for all the work in a larger district. So the COs will no longer serve a single county, but will be part of a larger team that will be overseen by a field supervisor. The idea is, again, to promote that teamwork, work effectiveness, and provide for increased flexibility when we need to address work priorities. Say we've got an overbag situation on one of the lakes within that district, we can target that with 2 or 3 officers on a particular weekend, and maybe allow the other officers to work on other areas where we have needs. So we do that now, but this will provide, I think, a greater amount of flexibility for us to address some of those kinds of work priorities. And essentially the idea is, you know, we have 2 officers in Webster, 1 in Britain, 1 in Sisseton, 1 in Millbank, and this would be just an example. The idea here would be that we would wash those county boundaries, and so the officers would be scattered geographically throughout that area, but we'd no longer just have the single officer focus his work within that county. He's certainly going to continue to be known as the local officer, but they'll be available then to work outside those areas, and the work priorities will be developed by the CO supervisor working in consultation with the local officers. So moving on, the concept is designed to improve our officer to supervisor ratio. Currently we have anywhere from 7 to 8 COs who report to an individual CO supervisor. This change will provide a lower ratio, be 4 to 5 officers per individual CO supervisor. We hope that'll promote some additional contact in the field between the supervisors and the COs. And like the COs, the field supervisor will really be part of that district team, and all those officers will serve all those communities throughout that entire district. Our hope is that field supervisor will frequent coffee shops all throughout that district and become known as the field supervisor, and again will be part of the entire team within that larger district. Moving back to the conservation officer program manager, the higher level position in each of the regions essentially will serve in that office administrator role. They'll direct all the conservation officer and law program functions within the region, so that will be that higher level supervisor. That position will actually supervise, be responsible for oversight of the 3 CO supervisors in their respective region, and the position will continue to report directly to the regional supervisor, but also serve as a member of that statewide law enforcement team, working in close concert with Andy Albin, our law program administrator. We're going to continue work on this issue, and of course, anytime you begin or start a new organizational structure, there's some growing pains, but we want to evaluate that over the next couple of years to ensure that our effectiveness in providing the level of services is not impacted. In fact, what our hope is, by having those field supervisor positions out as part of that team, we'll have essentially 4 additional staff placed out into the field, working day to day with the officers and the communities out in those larger districts. So we'll go from 61 field officers currently to 65. We'll continue to review our CO position to ensure that the position is accurate, and we'll modify the position description. Conservation officers over the years have been responsible for a wide variety of work in our state. In many states, their focus is just solely on law enforcement. In our state, that obviously is an important part of their responsibilities, but they also deliver our walk-in access program. They, are one of the primary contacts we have for wildlife damage services. They manage our agency lands. They conduct a lot of our surveys, and of course, they're intimately involved in the season setting process, and that's where we really start the process in terms of developing our recommendations that we bring to the commission. So, and then we'll continue to look for ways to improve communications, across our regional lines of organization, and also working with the various programs like law enforcement, habitat management, wildlife damage, and fisheries and wildlife. So with that, I'd be happy to entertain any questions. Again, I didn't touch on all the changes that we'll be making in terms of some of the other little nuances, but tried to focus primarily on the field changes that we're going to be making in a manner that hopefully will provide some additional opportunities for promotion and some salary benefits too. So.
Emmett, what would a starting conservation officer make? Is that governed by the state, or do we set that? Or?
Yep. Thanks, Commissioner. I appreciate the question. All salaries in state government are established by our Bureau of Human Resources. They go through an evaluation process anytime a position is developed. There's a sort of a salary assignment or alignment process that they utilize with various pay grades, and conservation officers are an N15 pay grade. I believe his starting salary was $1536 last year. I think it's probably $1580 something maybe now. So per hour, $1586 per hour, something like that, I think is the salary at present. And then the CO supervisor at present is a grade 16, so it'll be a pay grade above, about $3,000 to $4,000 difference in salary. And then the new position would be about $3,000 to $4,000 above that grade 16 at a grade 17. So probably closer to 42,000, something like that, I think is where they're at. And that doesn't include benefits, of course, but. CO.
At 1580, it'd be right around
32. That's a trainees, and of course the midpoint would be much higher than that. But.
All right, thank you, Emmett. We are going to shift gears for just a few minutes and have them come up